Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. It is Saturday, a day that I like to encourage people to read, and a day that I share books that I have recently finished. We got a whole bunch of them here. Got one that I'm not even holding, didn't have enough hands. So we're going to talk about books. And remember, the reason I share books is not to tell you to go read these. It's to encourage you to read more. Read for entertainment, read for education. Just read. And so I share books that I have read. You might see one and say, yeah, I really want to read that. You might look at all the books I share and not be interested in any of them, and that's okay. Go read the ones you are interested in. Books that you enjoy, books that are on topics that you want to learn about. Just read more. And of course, I want you to read the newsletter at enjoylifesafely.com. Download some of the free guides that are there. I'd like you to read those. They'll only help you. That's what I wrote them for. Get the newsletter. It has things every week on staying safe, defending yourself, living with the warrior's edge, martial arts, and personal development to make you an exceptional person and be the very best that you can be, so you can go out and enjoy more of life safely. Get all of that at enjoylifesafely.com. All right, now let's look at some books that I have recently read. I want to go through those sort of quickly just to share them with you, inspire you to go read something else. We got this one. We got Boris Vallejo's 3D Magic. Now, I grew up with fantasy books, Tarzan books, and Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo, two awesome artists that did a lot of covers. And Boris was always one of my favorites. And for many years, I used to get his calendars. And so I would have the Boris calendars. And then he started doing them with Julie Bell. And I had those for a number of years too. So I've been a fan of Boris's for decades and decades. And when these 3D magic books were the rage, of course, I picked up his and I've had it on the shelf. And I've looked through it a number of times throughout the years. And I decided to read through it one last time as I'm paring down the library, and we'll be donating this one off. But these 3D magic books, and I used to have quite a few of them. I think this one and the Disney one are the only ones I have left. And I'm not going to get rid of the Disney collection quite yet, but I am letting this one go. But they're full of all of these different pictures. And yeah, some of Boris's pictures are a little more adult. That's fine, right? But you look at these and they have those images inside that you got to get your eyes to sort of glaze out. So one easy way is putting your nose on the page and sort of pull your face away and just let your eyes relax. And then you start seeing these pictures in 3D. And if you can't quite get the shape, if you look at the next page on this page, it shows what the 3D shape is. Sometimes there's this hidden shape that appears 3D in the art, and other times it's just the whole picture looks 3D. And it's remarkable that the detail and the depth and the way it works. I don't understand our eyes and just how they can create that to make that visual 3D effect. But once you're in the 3D effect, you're looking at it that way, it's just remarkable. And then you blink your eyes and shake your head and it's gone again. So these are fun books. And this one with Boris, with his paintings, pretty cool book to have. I almost hate to see it go, but I'm paring down the library. Another art book, some of these were pretty quick reads to help pare down the library faster, just reading through them one last time before I get rid of them. The Art of Japanese Prints was another art book that I want to get rid of. And so I read through this, and it was a quick read because a lot of it is just the Japanese art. I've always liked the Japanese and the Korean both art and Chinese paintings and so forth. Living in Japan, living in Korea, those are the two countries that I'm closest to, but I like sort of all of the Asian type arts. And this was just a really cool book of the old prints of Japan and giving some history about some of those. So pretty quick read because a lot of it is just the pictures. And so I enjoyed reading through this. And I like to throw in this kind of reading. You got the Boris paintings, 3D, you got the old Japanese prints. I think that just helps us, broadens our perspective of the world. And so this was fun to look at and read through again, one last time before I donate it off. Another book that I just finished, Age Erasers for Men. This book is a little about a lot. All of the chapters are very short, and they're just on topics related to men getting older and so forth. So part 1, how a man ages. Part 2, stop the age robbers. So a whole bunch of just a little things, about just about anything that could go wrong. You see this table of contents, tons of chapters, just short chapters about a whole bunch of things. I mean, digestive problems, double chin, drinking problems, drug dependency, fatigue, foot problems, gout, gray hair, hearing loss, heart attack, heart disease. You can see they're sort of alphabetical order. I skip over here and you got prostate problems, respiratory diseases, sleep apnea, smoking, snoring, steroids, stress. Turn here, you keep going. You got ulcers and television, vision changes, worry, wrinkles. Then you got part 3, boost your youthfulness. You have things like take a plunge into the wild side, the handy heavyweight of health. Sometimes it's best to move on. Just going and going and going. Massage, marriage, leisure time, learning, humor, goals, honesty, sleep, stretching, vegetarianism, vitamins and minerals, yoga. I mean, just tons and tons about, a little about an awful lot. And so I enjoyed reading it. Some chapters were relevant to me, and I read a little closer. Some chapters were not relevant. I don't have that problem. I'm not worried about that problem, or I'm past that problem. And so those chapters, I skimmed. But, it was put out by the editors of Men's Health. It's a little bit older book, but a lot of it is still accurate. So, it was a good little read for health. Next, we got Navy SEALs Elite Training. This is one of the anatomy of fitness books. So when you look through it, you have a lot of the anatomy showing the muscles of the exercises, what you're working. And as you can see, there's a lot of pictures, a lot of exercise descriptions. So pretty quick read. And I read this before, and I've done most of these exercises, so nothing really new. I like the little bit of the beginning when they're talking about some of the training principles, stress inoculation and visualization and some of those kind of things, posturing, things, sort of related to the military and training. And at the end, there were some chapters on running and swimming, and then putting all these exercises together in workouts. So a pretty basic, simple workout book. Most of the exercises, you don't need equipment. Some you need a pull-up bar, and some you need some dumbbells. So, good little exercise book. I had read this years ago. I, perused it, read it really quickly again before I downsize the library. And the last book I'll talk about today that I just finished and I really enjoyed was David's Baldaci. I still have trouble pronouncing his name sometimes, but Nash Falls. Now, if you remember, I read one of his books a little while ago, and I didn't care for it as much because it was sort of a historic novel, and I don't care for those as much. And so that one was a lower on the list of his books that I've read. This one I really enjoyed, so it's higher up on the list. It's fairly new. This came out last year. Now, Nash Falls is sort of the lead character. His name is Nash, and it sort of shows his fall. And it's sort of an origin story about somebody whose life is drastically changed for some things that go on, and he drastically changes from what he was to what he becomes. This is telling that tale. Now, the only thing I didn't like about this book was it's not concluded. You end the book really wanting to know what happens next, and he even tells you, can't wait to see how Nash's story continues. Turn the page for a preview of Hope Rises, coming April 2026. So it's out now as hardcover. I'm going to probably have to get Hope Rises sometime soon, except I still have a lot of novels on the shelf I'm trying to read to downsize the library. But I will definitely in the future be reading Hope Rises, because I do want to know how Nash's story continues. And the titles, Nash Falls, Hope Rises, really make sense when you read the books. I'm not going to give that away, but I always wondered, Nash Falls, what does that really mean? And Nash Falls, Hope Rises, you will understand those titles better after you read the book. So good, fun book. Origin story of a character, a businessman, very, educated, intelligent, and his life gets turned upside down, and he changes and he turns into something different. And he's going to be needing to be that different person to carry on in that next book when we want to see what happens next. So those are the books. A fun novel, fast-paced action, just one that I really enjoyed. It had some twists and turns I definitely didn't see coming, so I really enjoyed that. Navy SEALs Elite Training, one of the anatomy books, good if you want to understand a bunch of basic exercises and put some of your body weight and a couple with dumbbells and a little bit of pull-up stuff, body weight exercises into a program. Good book. Age Erasers for Men, good book, a little about a lot as we age as men and want to try to prevent some of the things that happen to us as we get older. The Art of Japanese Prints, a good book with Japanese art, which I enjoy reading and looking at some of the older Japanese art. My favorite pictures are the ones of Mount Fuji, because I love that mountain. I have climbed to the top of that mountain, which is still, a memory that I cherish. It was such a cool thing to do. So the Mount Fuji pictures I really enjoy, and just all of the art is sort of cool to see. And then, speaking of art, one of my favorite artists growing up and used to get his calendar every year is the Boris Vallejo. And this is that book of those 3D pictures that when you let your eyes sort of space out, I don't really know what to call that, technically, but you got to look at these pictures in a certain way, and then you see the 3D images. And it was just really cool. I like these kind of books. Used to have a bunch of them. And that technology just sort of amazes me, how you let your eyes just sort of unfocus a little bit, and then you see these 3D and shapes and stuff. Those are the books this week. I hope it inspires you to read. I hope you go out and read books that you enjoy, read books that you can learn from. Before I leave, I do want to say hello to some folks. I saw some comments coming through as I was going. Thad is here. Want to say good morning, Thad. Appreciate you being here and saying good morning. Samuel's here and said good morning. Thank you, Samuel. Appreciate you being here and saying hello. Mark is here and said the 3D stuff sounds amazing. They are. If you've never seen those 3D books, check them out. They were all the rage for a while. And like I said, I had a number of them. I had this one because of being a Boris fan. I do have a Disney one that, because of my Disney collection, they are cool books. And it's weird because you got to just look at them just right and sort of let your eyes relax. And then once you see the 3D, it's like, wow, and it's so cool. And then you blink your eyes and shake your head and you can't see the 3D anymore. And you got to get your eyes focused back in that way again. So they are cool. Dixon said the trick to seeing that 3D stuff is to focus as if looking at the horizon far, far away. The way it works has to do with the blind spot where the optic nerve connects with the back of the eye. So there's a little bit of the why it works. And it is cool how it does create that. Jay said good morning from Jay, Vicky, and Sasha. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you guys. Baldaci. So that's how David's last name is pronounced. And I always sometimes butcher that name. So Baldaci, great author, obviously. He's had a lot of great books. And I like him too because he has some serial books, but not all one. You got Lee Child, Jack Reacher. I love him, but they're all Lee Child, and they're a little bit repetitive, even though they're still fun. David has had, series of, 5 or 6 books, but then 5 or 6 of this character. He did the historical, and now we got a new one, Nash, new character, and there'll be at least one more, Hope Rises, and that character could go on to even more books. So incredible mind, incredible author. So thank you, Dixon. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody. I hope these books inspire you to read more. That's what I'm here to do on a lot of Saturdays. Go out, make it a spectacular Saturday. Read the newsletter at enjoylifesafely.com. That's going out with an abbreviated version of the 20 safety tips that I did in a blog. So you'll get a preview, and it'll be a link to the longer 20 safety tips for back to school. Important topic for parents at this time. There's also going to be something about Yi Sun-shin, one of Korea's historic admirals that I have always liked and I've written about, starting with way back in the 1996 or so, when I had an article published in the Korea Herald newspaper on Yi Sun-shin. So that'll be in the newsletter. I'll have a little bit of a personal development article in there too, to help you be outstanding and exceptional, because that's what we want to be as we go out and enjoy life safely. So visit enjoylifesafely.com, help spread that website around, spread the newsletters around, get Coffee with Alain out to more and more people. Let's have more people join us, reading more, being exceptional, and enjoying life safely. Thank you, everybody. We will be back to see you tomorrow.